it, I would review all of the Afghanistanis that are armed diplomatic security services that went through the AFPAC Center of David Petraeus in Tampa. And instead of putting 500 FBI agents on all Afghanistanis, I would put 500 FBI agents on all of David Petraeus's graduates from the AFPAC Center in Tampa. That's how I would measure out and allot the resources. So there's questions here to be sure. We don't know. We don't know if these two events are related, but as you can see, I'm there. I'm going to take another simultaneous sip. "100% to the big guy and to the families and to Scott." I saw Scott Adams yesterday, and our prayers go out to you and anyone suffering from the side effects of the what. So are these two events related? Were we getting too close to the fire? Was Candace getting too close to the fire? I remember the family that ran the hotel. I for the life of me, I was looking for Ukrainians, to be honest with you, and I had a little bit of myopia. I had probably a little bit of confirmation bias blindness when I was at the hotel to find these assassins. I was looking for Ukrainians. I was working on the great research of Frau Hodel, HODL, Frau Hodel, not HODEL, but Frau Hodel. You can find her on Twitter. So I was working, and you can hear me say that in the video that I was looking for Ukrainian hit teams because I believe that they wanted to keep the Ukraine war going. David Petraeus and his cronies want to keep the Ukraine war going. They want to develop out these weapons systems for their friends. They want to dole out the Black Swan events to all their insiders who want to short stock and pump and dump and buy things for pennies on the dollar. So I was looking for Ukrainians at this hotel and other hotels. And it turns out now it could be that these folks are Egyptian. It could be that these folks are Iranian. It could be any country. I saw a lot of Chinese. I mean, I'm trying to go back 2 months in my mind and remember everything. And I just need to go back to enjoy. Yes, if you haven't been on in a while, hope you're enjoying Thanksgiving. Yes, please do enjoy your Thanksgiving. I appreciate all of you for coming here. But New York University is a good place for Petraeus to recruit. Yeah. Well, this was a goodwill program. I interviewed a lot of people in that were Afghan refugees in Washington, D.C. I've interviewed them in that a lot of them were translators for the generals. The various generals over there, several generals were cab drivers they had allowed the generals to have 50 different people that were translators in the war come over and get passports and so forth. Well, unfortunately, a lot of those people that were translators, and I'm interviewing them. I'm on long cab rides with them. I remember going to Washington University in Pennsylvania and was one of the last families out of Afghanistan. He was one of the translators, and he thought he was going to be murdered and so forth. So there is a connection between the generals. That's my point. And I've interviewed a lot of the generals, the 2 stars that worked for Petraeus and worked for Stanley McChrystal and so forth, and General Lavalle and all these other generals. And there is a strong connection to these sort of operatives from that were in special forces, that were assassins. They're also a part of the security teams of the generals. You may remember that Timothy McVeigh was in General Schwarzkopf's security team. So unfortunately, that's all fine if you're using the generals. Mattis, I met his translator, some of the other Kellys, but it's fine to have a security group that is brought to the United States. But then when you start bringing them here as assassins, right, you start sending them to the School of Assassins with the AFPAC Center with David Petraeus, the Special Operations Command in Tampa. That's when you cross the line, right? Now you're using foreign operatives. You're not saving someone from the defeat in Afghanistan. Now you're using them as assassins, right? And then they can return to the United States for additional assignments and assassinations, or provide safe houses for additional assassins coming into the United States, like the Owens did, like we showed with the Owens. So, and then giving them encrypted communications, which David Petraeus had sourced from General Shelton in Kosovo. We talked about, Candace talked about the French Foreign Legion providing training to a lot of these groups in order to create a background of terrorism, right? That the French Foreign Legion was going to be involved in training these different groups in Northern Africa, and they would have agents that they could insert into Northern Africa and the Gulf states to do psychological operations and do overthrows. So because they could speak Arabic and so forth, so they're repurposing the folks that can speak Farsi and Dari and so forth, then to reuse them for their own personal purposes for overthrows in places like the overthrows of Northern Africa, of Arab Spring, right? And I've seen it, and I've personally interviewed the people, so I know that they're involved in this. So yes, let's I'll take a break here. I'm a little bit this is a little close to me and a little personal, because of so many of the people that I interviewed were these fit the mold of this murder in Washington, D.C. So here's 100% sip to the big guy. Here's to the families that won't have their fathers at the table today. So what's the solution? What's the go forward plan? What's the resolve? What's the takeaway? What's the message that we should all have on this Thanksgiving Day for this situation? How do we fight this situation? How do we react to this situation? Well, the first thing to do isn't to run off to social media, I don't think, and say something bad about some Afghanistani who lives next door. That's what they want you to do. That's what they want you to foment, right? To talk about the Browns or whatever, no, today is the day to talk about the CIA and talk about the CIA, the deep state CIA that's still within our CIA. John Radcliffe is trying to clean out, but it's impossible with these career officers and so forth that pledge their allegiance to John Brennan, that pledge their allegiance to David Petraeus. You may remember Michael Mullen, and so forth. All of these guys that go back to George Bush's CIA. It sort of reminds me of the CIA of Allen Dulles and all the people that were still beholden to Allen Dulles even after Kennedy fired him. That's the same situation Trump has today with John Radcliffe. John Radcliffe is a good man. I've met him many times. I've talked to him many times. He's a straight shooter. I'm sure he's embarrassed as anyone today to find out this is a CIA operative that killed these two individuals. And because it is a CIA operative, I see him as a CIA operative more than I see him as an Afghani. I see the problem more as a CIA problem than I do as an Afghani problem, right? And that's going to lead me into where I think we're going with our investigation here, which again would be very heartbreaking to find our intelligence agencies sponsoring people to come into the United States with diplomatic visas, with State Department immunity, with diplomatic immunity, to come in to kill our political leaders like Charlie Kirk. And I think that's the takeaway here to me this morning, is this metadata today shows this diversion, this transplanting people's interest in the Charlie Kirk murder and this assassination team here at this hotel, right, to try to transplant that and transport that to Washington, D.C. this weekend. Try to change also when you do these murders in the shadow of the White House. It's a couple of blocks away. When you do the murders in the shadow of the White House, you change everyone's focus in Washington to that topic. You change their focus away from Charlie Kirk. You change Tulsi Gabbard's focus away from Charlie Kirk. You change Pete Hegseth's focus away from Charlie Kirk. You change Donald Trump's focus away. You change the focus of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. All of them now think, okay, this is the biggest problem we have. And what are we going to do about it? Well, let's do Golden Dome. Let's do the knee-jerk reaction, which is the Golden Dome, right? That's what we need. No, we don't need the Golden Dome, right? We need the golden microscope. We need the golden microscope to look at David Petraeus and look at the AFPAC Center and look at these assassins that have been released onto the streets, right, for flipping our elections and creating these psychological operations. That's what we need to do. So people are mentioning the SES, which we've talked a lot about the SES and how they took the top 3 governmental positions of GS-14, GS-15, GS-16, and basically created a 2-tier system instead of a graduated system that had been put in, go all the way back to Chester Alan Arthur and Teddy Roosevelt, and the civic system of graduated promotion for performance. You could argue about that effectiveness of that, but basically SES with Obama, they put in a 2-tier system, they basically put in an intractable union management that could never be moved, an immovable object with the top 3 levels of government, GS 14, 15, and 16, so that they never could be fired, right? They'd always vote themselves in for the highest pay raises. They never could be gotten rid of. Once you get that, it's sort of like the becoming a union organizer at one of the labor unions. It meant that you could sleep until 12 o'clock. You could eat spaghetti all day. You could party all night and gamble, and you were a made man, right? That's what the SES is. It makes you a made man. So happy Thanksgiving, 9 o'clock. And I'll go into the Substack I wrote yesterday, but I think I want to just say that I think we need to take these assassination threats, especially in the light of the blood that's on the street right now in Washington, D.C. I think we need to take Candace seriously. She might not have all the information, and when the information comes into a newsroom, it comes in fits and starts. It's the nature of the news. It's the news editor and the newsroom meeting with each other, validating and verifying like we do at these charrettes. We've had 56 of them now, 2 weeks long, 3 weeks long, some of them. Then to make sense of it all, to put the pieces all together. And that's where we are in the newsroom today. So unfortunately, when you just get one big event that occurs without being able to look at it in the mosaic of other events and look at the metadata in other events, you typically only can react against that one event. They plan a knee-jerk reaction against that event. They want you to say something against Afghanistanis. They want you to say something against immigrants. They want you to say something horrible in social media about immigrants today, and Afghanis in particular, or Muslims in particular. I'm not saying there aren't Muslim assassination teams. I'm at the hotel, right? I'm at the hotel where the assassination team stayed. So I'm not saying there aren't Muslim assassination teams. I'm saying we have to look at the puppeteers, not just the puppets. We have to look at the strings and follow the strings of the money and follow the strings of the metadata of the trading, right? And follow the people that benefit by these actions and look at their investments, like the Leviathan oil fields and the East Med pipeline, and look at the beneficiaries of breaking Gaza in two, the Gaza fortune cookie, right? We have to look at all these things that seem to be happening in the background of the Charlie Kirk murder, and look at the things that Candace Owens was reporting on that incited these events, triggered these events, right? And that's what I'd like to do today, is I'd like to show what events were triggered. And I know people are going to have a lot of different interpretations here. So the first thing I want to be clear about is I want to do one more simultaneous sip to the two fallen West Virginia Guardsmen. And it's because we don't want their death to be in vain that we're going to do this analysis now. So Yeah, and I did a lot of stuff with Field McConnell. I went up to Plum City, Wisconsin, and interviewed him. Spent a lot of time with Field, and he talked about the SES quite a bit. So yeah, we ran down as many sources, but this is all different people kind of putting their hand on different parts of the elephant here, saying this is the deep state. This our hands are on the deep state. This is what it is, right? And we need to show it for the elephant that it is. It's not any one individual's interpretation. It's the big picture here. It's the elephant in the room that we need to talk about. And it's not the Republican elephant. It's the elephant of the CIA that we need to talk about. And we've done a lot of precision journalism around this topic. And I think that's what I'd like to share with you right now. So I'm going to stop with the messages for just 1 second and go to the Substack. But as you can see that Candace had said, this team of assassins was here, again, under diplomatic immunity, under flying with these Golden Dome planes, 73 trips for the parents of Erica Kirk, pushing the Golden Dome technology, going to 27 of Charlie Kirk's events, but we don't know where the other events were. Could it be Rio Wake in America tour with Mike Flynn? I would guess that they would be related events for this assassination team. But I'm at the hotel. It is walking distance, so they wouldn't have needed to drive their cars. They rented 5 different vehicles, SUVs and so forth. They had a lot of kit, but they wouldn't have needed to. But it is on University Parkway, as you can see me pointing down University Parkway here. So there are going to be camera hits of this assassination team on University Parkway. There's also camera hits on the other end of University Parkway by BYU. I'm going to go into the Mormon connection with Egypt here in a second. I'm going to introduce to you a name of the Egyptian minister that came to UVU and BYU in 2022. He's also very involved in Gaza. And I think this is going to be a name that's going to be important going forward. His name's Zoran, Zahran, Zoran. He's one of these ministers that's always negotiating something in secret, and you never know why. He's meeting with the people he's meeting with. I think it's Gaza. I think it's the Leviathan oil field. I think it's the East Med pipeline. I think it's Golden Dome, but we'll get there. But my point is there's going to be a lot more hits here, and on this University Parkway, where between BYU and UVU, and this is the worst nightmare for David Petraeus when you have one of your assassination teams being outed, right, by citizen journalists, by Candace Owens. I'm there. I'm pointing it out. Right, Ian Carroll's covering it. All of a sudden, this covert action is now coming to the fore. What do you do? Right. Well, I don't know. David Petraeus. It seems like murder is the only remedy he ever considers. Just making a bigger stain of blood somewhere else seems to be the only methodology he has for changing this topic of discussion. And I'd have to say that's true for the CIA as well. I can't say for 100% clarity and certainty that this Candace closing in. I'm closing in from another side. Ian Carroll closing in from a third side. I can't say that that's what caused the false flag, but we do know it's a CIA operative, and we do know it's a CIA assassin that was sent out to kill these men. So we do have a connection to the CIA with Brennan, the deep state CIA, not John Ratcliffe, the deep state CIA with John Brennan and and David Petraeus. So again, we're closing in. And if you forgot what I said 2 months ago there, when I was staying there for about a week, I stayed at several other places where I thought the Ukrainian teams might have been. I'll be the first to admit I thought it was Ukrainian kill teams, Ukrainian to keep the war going. But there appears to be a Gaza thread here that I missed. I'll just say right off the bat, there's an Egyptian Gaza thread that I missed that I think Candace may have got. But I'll play the video first. This about 2 months ago now. Oh, I might have done this wrong. That may be just a screenshot. I don't have the actual video. Okay. All right. Well, I basically say that there's this Uncle Mikey. They're training at this base in Hill Air Force Base. There's these ROTC. It seems like ROTC is very involved in this murder as far as the diversion is concerned. They're diverting for some kind of assassination team. We're looking for a Ukrainian team here at this hotel. Standing and looking kind of over the Walmart parking lot where right next to there's the hotel here, and then there's a declivity, and then there's the Walmart parking lot. And you can look straight out to the BYU uh, temple, and right across the street is the UVU campus. So that's how closely the two campuses are aligned. But I walked many days from that hotel where they stayed, that the assassination team stayed, to the UVU amphitheater. That's how close it is. So a little bit of levity. I put in me at the breakfast bar here with La Quinta. This is before I knew about the assassination of these guardsmen, so I apologize if it's in poor taste this morning because of the guardsmen's murder. But put it this way, we were in the right place, right? We were just in the right place. I have sourced a place where there's an amphitheater that is a smaller scale model that I can go back to now in the future and just do alignments and draw string and do recreations and so forth. I've where I'm watching dogs. I'm right now I'm dog sitting, so but I found a place that is a similar amphitheater, and I'll be using it in the future for the Charlie Kirk assassination. Again, I think when people who are running these operations see the various folks closing in, with Candace closing in, Ian closing in, I'm closing in, that's when they get nervous. That's when they do another psychological operation. So again, I do think these guys were for some reason just loved orange juice, because the whole time I was there, they had the hardest time keeping the orange juice supplied. So I don't know if it was French Foreign Legion on the left or Ukrainians on the right. I certainly felt like it was Ukrainians at this La Quinta, but Candace says it's French Foreign Legion. I would like to remind everybody, though, that French Foreign Legion can be from anywhere. If the French Foreign Legion, and we talked about the French Foreign Legion being based in southern France, but they also had a strong presence in Algeria. And a lot of the trials I went to for Benghazi and so forth, I saw training happening in Algeria. And I saw the trainers in this case being French Foreign Legion trainers in Northern Africa for the whole operation that David Petraeus ran across the shelf of Africa, the top shelf of Africa. So I think there is a connection here that Candace is onto something, that these are the same trainers, the Egyptian trainers we talked about for Libya, right? We talked about air bases in Egypt being used for Libya, right? When I was at the Benghazi trial. So I do think that Candace is onto something here, that these are the trainers of the various terrorist groups, and they could have been, and this is where I think Candace was getting to, through the French government. And the French government does have knowledge of what the French Foreign Legion is doing in terms of training terrorist organizations. And Brigitte Macron may have knowledge, and Emmanuel Macron, not may, they do have knowledge of what the French Foreign Legion is doing, and they would know if the French Foreign Legion was training terrorists, right? And they would know if the French Foreign Legion is training terrorists for the October 7th attack. So we don't have all the information about where Hamas trained, but there could be French Foreign Legion trainers in the Hamas attack. And this Zaran individual, this minister from Motaz is his first name, Motaz. This Motaz Zaran, Zahran, is very involved. He seems to be very involved in the planning, not necessarily in the planning, but providing safe haven and providing training grounds for the French Foreign Legion to do the training of the people that were potentially involved in the Hamas attack. Now, I know that's quite a charge, and I know that's quite a claim, but I think as the days go by, I think the piece here that's being covered up, and I think the piece here that's being covered up with these murders is the fact that there was French complicity through the French Foreign Legion and the French Foreign Legion trainers in Egypt, just like Benghazi, with Hamas terrorists providing Egyptian ground and Egyptian bases in the Sinai for the training of the October 7th attacks. And again, Zahran is one of those ubiquitous, obsequious diplomats that doesn't have a charter and doesn't have a desk and doesn't have a portfolio that usually means that he's working on something covert in Washington. And he's been meeting with the folks in Utah and meeting with the folks in Washington over the last 3 years, and no one quite knows what his station is. No, they don't know what his desk is. They don't know what his portfolio is. And I say that portfolio is what I call the Gaza fortune cookie. I wrote about it in the Braverman Prophecy. The Braverman Prophecy is all about taking the Gaza fortune cookie between Israel and Egypt and basically cracking the fortune cookie, the fortune being the Leviathan oil field, the $1 trillion oil field, and cracking the cookie between the two of them, right? George Papadopoulos was the one who negotiated the Iran nuclear deal. He was the one who negotiated this East Med pipeline. He was the one who negotiated with the Egyptians for cracking the cookie in two, right? And half of the trillion going to Egypt and half of the trillion going to Israel. But the secret of that Gaza fortune cookie is that Genie Energy and Noble Oil and CIA insiders and Rothschild and Rupert Murdoch and all the other people like Dick Cheney and so forth that are Jim Woolsey that are in Genie Energy, they're the ones that are the beneficiaries, right? They're the beneficiaries of these cookie deals, these cracking the cookie deals, these Gaza fortune cookie deals, not the people of Egypt, not the people of Israel, right? It's the insiders, the super Zionists that want having a militarist agenda, right? And it's the insiders that they negotiate with in Egypt in the name of Egypt. So Zahran is the key guy and could be the diplomat that these teams are protecting. And these 73 trips for the Golden Dome and so forth could be to create a false flag for the Golden Dome, false flag events all over the United States, assassinations, drone attacks, and so forth, in order to feather the bed of the Israelis who are selling the Golden Dome, Erica Kirk's parents. I know how hard that concept is for most Americans to believe that there would have a whole program of funding and feeding the opposition and feeding the terrorist groups in order to create false flags in order to achieve their ends through knee-jerk reactions, through Hegelian disasters with pre-planned solutions. I know how hard that is for Americans to believe, but in the case of Al-Qaeda, in the case of all of the al-Nusra and all the intrigues around Libya and Syria, Ukraine, Yemen, Sudan, over and over again, we see the CIA funding both sides in order to create a reaction, in order to create a crisis, in order to create a reaction, in order to create a pre-planned solution, right? So again, Zahran, I believe, I'm just making the statement this morning, has the highest probability in my mind, having met with the UVU before, hiring mercenaries from the ROTC to do mercenary stints in the Middle East, having a 3-year relationship. Zahran is the person I'm putting forward that this contingent was protecting. And I believe that the plane trips that they made to Nebraska was Warren Buffett, who was negotiating for the Rothschild interests for the Israeli side of this fortune cookie, this Gaza fortune cookie. And I do believe Zahran was the person negotiating for Sisi on the Egyptian side. So what you can learn over a glass of orange juice with the terrorist teams. So again, they're the first. You may think terrorists are always worried about their own business. No, they're the first in front of you in front of the coffee line as well. They're trouble. They sop up all the resources. When you get to the La Quintas, they're the ones that suck up all the bandwidth for watching American movies. You would think they would have bandwidth limits and they would just be doing messages. No, they're the worst, sopping up all the bandwidth resources. A little bit of levity here. Again, I didn't know about the murders when I created these graphics. Who did I think it was? Who did I think it was at the La Quinta? Who did I think was staying there? I thought it was these Azov founders. We've had several contributors on our channel that have said Belitsky was the guy. I'm not saying it couldn't have been Azov on the plane. I asked about Ukrainians and I didn't find them at this hotel. So again, I'm just putting the information out here so everyone can look at who Belitsky is and see his background to the CIA and see his background to the assassination teams. We covered Dobrynin, who came in for January 6th with his goons. So, and then this is the other person that was mentioned yesterday, Kruyetevich, right? So I just putting those names out there for the first time. So sort of put them on the crime board, Kolomoisky's crime board. So those are the two there. Where do I think all this is coming from? What's the comeuppance here? What are the, why is the State Department involved with diplomatic immunity? Why is the State Department involved with the Armed Diplomatic Security Services? By the way, at the Benghazi hearing, the Benghazi trial, everyone was Armed Diplomatic Security Services from the American side, and all the Egyptians, it was all Egyptians for overthrowing Ukraine, overthrowing Gaza, overthrowing Libya. What's the bottom line that Kate says here is that DSS were allowed to kill you with no questions asked. That's the perfect guise and cover for an assassination team. Again, I had my troubles at the La Quinta. You would think that they would be modest, but no, they were the first ones in the pool. Again, a little bit of levity here before I knew about the murders. But again, the question is it French Foreign Legion or is it the terrorists? Who knows? But that is the La Quinta. Again, they're the first people to launder their clothes in the morning. Again, here I am with a few shekels trying to get my clothes laundered on the road. And I have to fight an elbow with French Foreign Legion and Ukraine assassins. Same thing for loading all their kit. But this does remind you that there's 5 vehicles that can be traced here along University Parkway. Again, there's no room to practice at UVU without being seen. Right? If you're going to be selling Golden Dome, you would cover the BYU game that's there that weekend with Stanford. They come in on the 4th. The Stanford game's on the 6th. It's a perfect opportunity to trial your kit, to trial your equipment. But we don't have those hits yet. We don't have those camera hits yet. Movie night with popcorn was the same thing. They're the first in line with the popcorn, and they're filling their popcorn with reckless abandon. Right. And again, the paid journalists that are there trying to get one of the freebies from the hotel are shut out yet again at the La Quinta. So a little bit of levity, but you get the point that they're close, right? They're staying there for a number of days from the 4th to the 13th. There should be a lot of hits from the cameras. There should be a lot of hits on University Parkway as their SUVs are taking the kit back and forth up University Parkway. Again, if you don't remember Azov, they're the ones who don't do any of the fighting in Ukraine. They're the ones who just force people to go to the front lines and get murdered, right? They're the ones who seem to be involved in providing all of the fake witnesses in our trials to find out about encrypted communications with the CIA. I covered the Las Vegas trial with Smirnov. They're legendary for their cruelty. They're legendary for their assassinations. They're legendary for being a proto Nazi organization. Again, I'm making a case here that says I still think the assassins are Ukrainian. I looked for them and didn't find them, but I think I'm making allowance for the great reporting of Candace Owens as well, that they could be Egyptians, they could be French Foreign Legion, they could be this Israeli male and French female. But my point here is when Candace Owens started saying we need to look into the background of Brigitte Macron because she's 24 years older, she's 72 years old, Macron's 48. When she said we need to start looking into the background of Brigitte Macron, what that did is it caused people to look at not her being a man, right? The Truganot, the name and so forth. But what it did is it caused people to look into the Nazi paperclip background of Brigitte Macron. And I played basketball after I graduated in college in Bamberg, Germany, semi-professionally. The Truganot family is from Bamberg, a little village that used to be the Regnitz River, that used to be the seat of the Holy Roman Empire for a while. But that also was one of the towns of Hitler's Germany. It's like a lot like Nuremberg, right? In that area of Bavaria, a lot of the science experiments and so forth for the Hitler's theories about Jews, especially with bioweapons and biochemicals and biochemical experiments. That whole area has a lot of that history. So when I see the Macron family coming from Bamberg coming to Amiens, her family's from Amiens. This is to the north. This is a World War I town. I visited the museum in Amiens. A lot of these battlefield museums are on the old front line in World War I between the German front line and the French front line. And that's where a lot of the war material was left after the war. So they made museums out of all these people, but all these places. But Amiens, where she's supposedly from, they're supposed to be from a bakery where they made macaroons. Well, if ever there was a cover story, and like their chocolatiers, I definitely have an IG Farben feeling about Brigitte Macron. And again, when you bring people in near Amiens, not too far from Brussels, not too far from the Supreme Allied Command there in Mons, when you bring people in to NATO, so close, Amiens, so close to Mons, it just feels like they're taking all the Nazi bioweapons and bringing them in and laundering them. It just has that Nazi paperclip feel. I don't have all the proof of that yet, but I think the whole chocolatier story is a chocolate covering of something much more sinister from Bamberg. And I don't have all when I was in Bamberg, I was playing basketball, and so I wasn't researching, the Hitler years, the Nuremberg years. So I don't have all the details, but there's something about the Macron situation, the Brigitte Macron, the Truganot situation that just seems like a cover story. It seems like there's a dark past that's hidden there that Candace Owens kicked over and put scrutiny on this family that they did not want. But I don't think it's because she was a male. I think it's because there's a dark Nazi scientist past to this. Again, I don't have the proof, but anyway, I was looking for at the hotel there, in the hotels. I was looking for Ukrainians. I was looking for Uncle Mikey. I was looking for Azov family Robinson. I was looking for people that were associated with Tyler Robinson, and Ukrainians that were associated with TPUSA, the wives and so forth. I wasn't looking for Egyptians. So, but I'm making allowance for her reporting. Uh, Mirot Vorets is the kill list. Again, this is the Ukrainian kill list. When I see organizations that have assassination teams and they have public kill lists, then I have to say, take them seriously. Now, I don't know if Candace Owens' name's on this kill list, but I was told that Andrew Colvett and other people in the intelligence community said her name was on this list. They said Tucker Carlson's name was on this list. They said Charlie Kirk's name was on this list. So I've got to take these take these kill lists seriously. Right? We have to take the kill list seriously. What do I think is behind all this? The Warren Buffett intrigues, the David Petraeus intrigues, the Henry Kravitz intrigues, the who is making the money, follow the money here. It seems like it's Golden Dome everywhere you look. Right? We've created all the countries of Eastern Europe here for the Monopoly Board, the Golden Dome Monopoly Board. The planes are Golden Dome planes. The parents of Erica Kirk are Golden Dome. Erica Kirk. The false flags of David Petraeus' signature is a Golden Dome, right? The Egyptian ambassador, it seems like, with Warren Buffett, seems like he's pushing Golden Dome. It just seems like Golden Dome monopoly here. It seems like a trade of the technology that was stolen by Jonathan Pollard, which is the Star Wars technology that Reagan put in to a Missile and Space Defense Command in Huntsville, Alabama. And that technology was stolen through the FBI in Washington, D.C., through Jonathan Pollard over 26 years, right? That has funded the intellectual property of Rafael Defense Systems, right? That is the Golden Dome. The first instantiation of the Golden Dome is in Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, right? Now it seems the manifest destiny of the super Zionists in Israel, and this is where I do credit Candace Owens, I do credit Ian Carroll. They are trying to project this on the world, and they have created an alignment with the French and the French Foreign Legion as trainers, as CIA trainers, and with the terrorist groups like Hamas to provide them sanctuary and training and equipment and explosives, right, in order to create the chaos that will drive the Golden Dome, right, that will drive the Golden Dome in all of our U.S. cities, that'll drive the Golden Dome in the Eastern European cities. I think Poland is next. I think Cairo is next. I think some of these other cities in the Eastern Seaboard are next. Washington, D.C. may be next, if it isn't already, trialing some type of technology. Again, it was the Iron Dome and the Iron Beam, which is the laser add-on, if you will, the cheaper laser add-on, much more expensive to buy, but much cheaper to shoot things down with the Iron Beam. And Trump has renamed it and put it inside his cloak and called it the Golden Dome. He's the one who's given it the gold plating. So I do think there's some metadata evidence here to see that there has been an adoption. Howard Lutnick seems to be the key proponent. Scott Bessent seems to be the other key proponent of the super Zionists inside Trump's cabinet to push the Golden Dome technology. We do seem to be in a Golden Dome moment right now with the murder of these West Virginia guardsmen. This is Golden Dome Scrabble. When Erica Kirk was a small child playing with her parents, she was only allowed to play Golden Dome Scrabble, and she was only allowed to use cities of Eastern Europe, right? In the manifest destiny of putting golden domes in all the capitals of the Eastern European countries and the Balkans, from the Black Sea all the way to the Baltics. Once the foot is in the door with this technology, this is a superseding technology. Once these technologists are in, then it's the next step is encroachment of actually taking the countries over, right? Taking control of the countries in a recapitulation of what they call the Pale, of what Catherine the Great bequested to fleeing Jews from Europe, called the Pale, from the Black Sea all the way to the Baltic. This is where I say the Golden Dome is being planned. This is why Erica Kirk wasn't allowed to use any other capitals names when they played Golden Dome Scrabble, other than capitals of that were contiguous and adjacent to the old Soviet Union. A little bit of satire here, a little bit of punsmanship here. I'm not actually saying she played Golden Dome Scrabble, but I am saying that if you read the tea leaves and you read the metadata, it reads like that. It reads like that. You can see the golden domes here on the game board in this adapted form of Risk. You play the board game Risk. This is Golden Dome Risk, where you've just basically alighted the map of Eastern Europe with golden domes, and they're not allowed to touch anything else. They were not allowed any other toys. Erico's not allowed any other toys other than small golden domes, right? So, and then of course, Golden Dome Clue, right? And what are the rooms in this Golden Dome Clue? They're nations of Eastern Europe that need the Golden Dome protection, right? When the family played Golden Dome Clue. I go into how this is a new American Phoenix program that's going to be effectuated through this Golden Dome. I go through a lot of information, but I'll just say this. The information that Candace Owens was given about the French Foreign Legion, I think, was to also misdirect her from the fact that the French Foreign Legion is the ones that are training the terrorists. And I do believe the French Foreign Legion in Egypt provided training and material for the October 7th attack. I'm not saying Israel planned the October 7th attack. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying, though, that there does appear to be a French connection, a Foreign Legion connection. And again, Golden Dome is the answer, right? We'll be able to, we couldn't have a kid with the DJI drone, see men flying in these, flying monkey apparatuses coming in for October 7th. We couldn't have just a simple coast watcher with binoculars, right? It has to be Golden Dome, right? October 7th, the reaction is the Golden Dome. We're following, again, if the Trump wants to follow and get to the bottom of who is behind this, look at who gave the State Department visas. We found the person that was doing that in the time of Kennedy. We found the State Department of Security. It was called at that time. The Office of Security, it was called at that time. Now it's DSS. Find out who's giving these assassins their passports, and you have the answer. It's going to be John Brennan. It's going to be John Brennan, just like the 9/11 hijackers. So, and again, John Ratcliffe, much better than going through all the files and finding out all the people that came here from Afghanistan and creating a whole bunch of humanitarian stories where the FBI and other people are clamping down on Afghanistan refugees. It would be much better to clamp down on the people who have diplomatic passports through the State Department. That's where your assassins are going to be. I write extensively about this. I go and I bring back a lot of the things for people who are not familiar with things I've talked about in the past. So you got a lot of historical backgrounder here that people have said I don't have full context. I don't have all the background of everything you're saying. I don't have foreknowledge of everything you're saying. I haven't been following you. So I put some information in here about that. And I talk about the various historical uses of these bankers, reconstruction banks like Bank of International Settlements for harboring things from the old Nazi regime to be reused over and over again in these psychological operations. So there's some background there, but that's an overview of the Substack. But I think at the end of the day, if I had one picture to explain it all with Erica Kirk and her family, I would explain it with the